There comes a moment when the most powerful move you can make is stepping back, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in strength, in silence. When you distance yourself from someone who took you for granted, something remarkable happens. He starts to feel something he hasn't felt in a long time. Your absence, that distance, it's not empty. It's full of mystery, full of weight. It carries the echo of your laughter, the softness of your presence, the energy that once surrounded him so naturally. You see, people often need space to understand value. You were always there, present, giving, loyal. But now, without you in his daily reach, he begins to notice. He notices the quiet. He notices the void. He notices that no one fills the room the way you did. Distance triggers something deep in the male mind. It creates a psychological tension. He starts wondering, is she thinking about me? Is she moving on? Has she realized she deserves more? And when you don't chase, when you don't explain yourself, when you don't beg, it shakes him. Why? Because silence is powerful, because distance speaks, because the one who walks away with grace leaves behind the loudest echo. You see, when you're close, he may forget your worth. When you're distant, he starts to remember. He remembers the moments you made him feel seen. He remembers your loyalty, your light, your presence. And suddenly, he wants it back. But here's the twist. This time he has to earn it, because you didn't step back out of weakness. You distance yourself out of clarity, out of self, love, out of the wisdom that says, if I'm not being valued, I will not beg to be seen. And that kind of distance, it doesn't just make him want you. It teaches him never to lose you again. There's something undeniably powerful about mystery, something magnetic, something that pulls him in, even when you say nothing at all. When you're always available, always replying instantly, always showing up no matter how he treats you. It becomes predictable, safe, and unfortunately in his mind. Easy, but when you begin to pull back, not as a game, not out of spite, but from a place of knowing your worth, you create space. And within that space, mystery is born. Mystery isn't about pretending. It's about no longer broadcasting every emotion, every thought, every move. It's about keeping some parts of you sacred and shared. Because when a man can no longer predict you, he starts to think about you. When he can't read your next step, he starts watching closely. When he doesn't know what you're feeling, he starts feeling more. Mystery makes him curious again. It makes him wonder what you're doing, who you're becoming, and whether he's still a part of that story. It disrupts the rhythm he got comfortable in, the rhythm where he thought you'd always be there. And now, you're not, you're quieter, you're distant, you're unpredictable, and it rattles him. Because before he had the security of your consistency, now he's dealing with your absence, and the uncertainty of whether he still holds your attention. And here's the truth, desire thrives in uncertainty, not chaos, not confusion, but that beautiful in-between space where he's no longer sure, where he's no longer in control, where he feels just a little off balance. Because he can't figure you out anymore, that's when you become unforgettable, because mystery forces him to engage emotionally and mentally. It awakens his instincts to pursue, to explore, to earn what he once took for granted. And when he begins to realize that your silence doesn't mean you're waiting, but that you may actually be moving on, that's when the longing begins. That's when he feels the pull. That's when he starts to want you more. Not because you asked him to, but because your mystery left him no choice. It's human nature. We tend to undervalue what's always within reach. When someone is constantly present, giving, forgiving, showing up no matter how they're treated, that presence can slowly start to fade into the background. It becomes expected, assumed, routine. He knows you're there. He counts on it, but that very consistency, as beautiful and loyal as it is, can sometimes blind him to the value behind it. Now imagine this. You pull back. You stop texting first. You're no longer readily available. You stop pouring your energy into someone who gives little in return. That shift, it's not just a change in behavior. It's a shift in energy. Suddenly you're no longer easy to access. You're no longer an emotional safety net. That's when scarcity comes in, and scarcity changes everything, because what's rare becomes precious. What's no longer guaranteed becomes desirable. That same woman he once overlooked in the crowd now stands out, simply because she's no longer standing right in front of him, waiting. He begins to notice the lack of your presence. He notices that the comfort of your check-ins, your good mornings, your emotional support, has gone quiet, and it stings, not all at once, but gradually. In moments where he reaches for his phone, expecting a message from you that never comes. In situations where he needs comfort and you're not there to offer it. That's the power of scarcity. It flips the emotional script. What was once easy becomes missed. What was once expected becomes hoped for. And he realizes, she's not as accessible as she used to be, and maybe I should have valued her when I had her. Scarcity makes him reassess. It holds up a mirror to his own behavior. It forces him to see the emotional imbalance he once ignored. Because now that your attention isn't freely given, he begins to chase what he used to neglect. And here's the deep truth. People are wired to place higher value on things they fear they might lose. It's not manipulation. It's psychology. It's human instinct. And when a man begins to sense that your love is no longer automatic, that your presence is no longer promised, he starts to recalibrate how he sees you. And the more distant you become, the more valuable you appear. Sometimes it's only in your absence that he starts to hear the echo of everything you used to be in his life. When you're constantly present, emotionally available, physically around, offering support and understanding, it leaves little room for him to think. He doesn't have to reflect. He doesn't need to question anything, because you're there. Always, and that presence, it creates emotional noise. Familiar, comforting, but also blinding. But then you step back. You create distance. You stop showing up the way you used to, not out of coldness, but out of clarity. And in that space, something powerful happens. He starts to reflect. He's not surrounded by your energy anymore. No more messages lighting up his phone. No more soft reminders of your care. No more emotional safety net waiting for him after he disappears and comes back when it suits him. Now, there's quiet, and that quiet becomes loud in his world. Loud enough for him to start replaying conversations in his mind. Loud enough for him to remember moments he brushed off. Loud enough to feel the sting of his own carelessness. You see, when you're near, he can avoid the truth. He can distract himself. He can use your presence as a shield against his own guilt or confusion. But when you're gone, he's left with nothing but himself. And that's when real reflection begins. He starts to question what went wrong. He starts to remember how it felt to be loved by someone so genuine, so consistent, and more importantly, he starts to see what he did or didn't do that made you pull away. That distance you created becomes a mirror he can't look away from. Reflection requires silence. It requires discomfort. And it often requires the loss of something meaningful to awaken a deeper emotional awareness. By stepping back, you didn't just change your position in his life. You changed the perspective. Now, instead of looking at you as a constant, he looks back at you as someone he should have paid more attention to. Someone whose love he might not get back so easily. Space breaks the routine. It disrupts the emotional autopilot. It forces him to confront himself and what he truly feels for you without the crutch of your constant closeness. And that's where transformation starts, not in the presence of your love, but in the stillness that follows it. There's a strange paradox when it comes to love and attachment. Sometimes it's not the closeness that intensifies feelings. It's the distance. When you're always present, always giving, always emotionally available, the connection can start to feel routine. Comfortable, yes, but also expected. He knows where you are. He knows you'll answer. He knows you'll listen, but emotional pull, that doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in the absence of it. That's the silent power of distance, because when you pull away, not with drama, not with threats, but with grace, it stirs something he wasn't ready to feel. Longing, and longing isn't just missing someone, it's yearning. It's that hollow feeling in his chest when he's reminded of you in random moments. He hears your favorite song, sees your favorite coffee order, scrolls through a photo he forgot to delete. That's when it hits. The emotional pull begins. You see, emotional pull isn't created through constant texting, begging for attention, or asking, "Do you miss me?" It's created in silence. It's built when he realizes that your world no longer revolves around him. When he senses that you're living, growing, evolving, without needing his validation, that distance begins to haunt him, not in a painful way, but in a way that quietly lingers. He remembers your laugh, but now he wonders who else hears it. He remembers how you supported him, but now he worries you might be offering that strength to someone else. And the very thought of not being part of your orbit anymore, it gnaws at him, slowly, emotionally. Deeply, that's how emotional pull works. It builds not in your presence, but in your absence. Because now he has no control, he doesn't know where your heart stands, and the more he thinks, the more he feels. The more space you create, the more pressure builds on his side of the connection. It's like emotional gravity. You've removed your energy, and now he's leaning in, drawn toward the very thing he once overlooked. And here's the truth. People don't start craving something until it's no longer right in front of them. The farther you go, the stronger the pull becomes, because now you're not just a memory. You're a presence he can feel but can't reach. That distance becomes a magnet, and without a single word, you become unforgettable. There's a moment when words are no longer necessary, not because you don't have anything to say, but because you've said everything already, through your effort, your loyalty, your patience, your presence. And when all of that is met with disregard or indifference, there's only one thing left to offer: silence. And silence. It's not empty, it's not weak, it's not passive. Silence is a statement. A loud, bold, undeniable statement that says, "I'm done trying to prove my worth to someone who refuses to see it." You see, when you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop chasing clarity that was never freely given, it shifts the dynamic completely. Because he was used to the noise, your voice reaching out, your concern showing up, your need for answers or connection, that was his comfort zone. He could rely on it. He could almost hear your thoughts before you spoke them. But now there's nothing, no texts, no calls, no paragraphs explaining how you feel, no emotional breakdowns, no "I miss you," to soothe his ego, and that silence, it's deafening to him. He starts wondering, why isn't she reaching out? Why is she so quiet all of a sudden? Is she gone for good? Or worse, is she done caring? Because silence doesn't mean you're gone. It means you're choosing yourself. It means you no longer feel the need to perform emotional gymnastics to be seen, heard, or chosen. It means the version of you who accepted breadcrumbs has left the room, and what's left behind is this vast, echoing silence that forces him to sit with himself and with the consequences of his actions. He'll replay moments looking for clues. He'll scroll through old messages hoping to feel that connection again, and all he's left with is stillness, because silence removes access. And when someone loses access to your energy, your care, your voice, they begin to realize just how powerful your presence actually was. They begin to crave the very sound they once ignored. But silence isn't about punishment, it's about peace. It's about no longer negotiating your value with someone who only listens when the noise stops. Because once you go silent, he has to lean in. He has to feel instead of just hearing, and what he feels now is the absence of you. That's what silence does. It speaks on your behalf without raising your voice, without a single word. And its message is always received. In every connection, romantic or otherwise, There's an invisible balance of power, not power in a manipulative sense, but emotional weight. Who gives more, who shows up first, who carries the emotional responsibility when things go wrong. And if you're honest with yourself, you might realize you've been the one holding most of it. You've been the one initiating conversations, making plans, forgiving first, reaching out after silence, and constantly trying to fix the connection, even when he made no effort to meet you halfway. That's not love, that's imbalance, and the more it happens, the more the dynamic tilts in his favor. He gets used to being chased. He gets used to you coming back. He learns, consciously or not, that he can pull away and still have your loyalty waiting, that he doesn't need to try harder because you'll always be the one holding the relationship together. But then you shift. You stop explaining, you stop reaching, you pull back. Not to hurt him, but to heal yourself, and suddenly everything changes. Because when you withdraw your energy, your presence, your emotional labor, you reset the balance. You force the dynamic to correct itself, and for the first time, he has to feel the consequences of his passivity. Now he's the one wondering what went wrong. He's the one feeling uncertain. He's the one replaying old messages and scrolling through your stories, wondering where he lost his grip. And here's the quiet truth. Power in relationships isn't about control. It's about emotional equality. And when one person constantly gives while the other only takes, love becomes labor. By distancing yourself, you send a silent but powerful message. I am no longer willing to overextend myself just to be seen or loved. And when that energy is no longer handed to him so freely, he feels the shift immediately. He no longer has the same emotional access. He doesn't get your updates, your attention, your softness. That control he thought he had, it's gone, because now you're in your power, and that power doesn't come from ego. It comes from self-awareness. It comes from the realization that love should never cost you your dignity, your peace, or your sense of balance. As you reset the dynamic, you begin to operate from a place of truth. You're no longer fighting to keep someone who's not fighting for you. You're no longer bending to be chosen. You're reclaiming your emotional center. And when you do that, the entire dynamic begins to shift in your favor. Because when he can no longer feel that emotional safety net under him, when he no longer has your predictable presence keeping everything steady, he realizes the control he thought he had was never real. It was borrowed. And now it's returned to where it belongs. There's something subtle but very real that happens when you're constantly available, always reaching out, always showing care. Even when it's not reciprocated, you begin to feed his ego, often without even realizing it. Every time you respond instantly to his messages, even after he's ignored yours for days. Every time you forgive too quickly just to avoid tension. Every time you check in, ask how he's doing, show love, even when he hasn't earned it. You're confirming a belief he's built up over time. She needs me more than I need her. That belief, it's what inflates his ego. It's what convinces him that he doesn't need to change, grow, or show up better. Because no matter what he does or doesn't do, you'll still be there. But when you finally decide to step back, not as a strategy, but as a response to being emotionally neglected, something inside him starts to shift. Because now, for the first time, his ego isn't being stroked. He's not getting the validation he used to count on. He checks his phone, and there's nothing. He posts something online, hoping you'll react or reach out, and you don't. And slowly, the pedestal he built himself on begins to crack. You see, feeding a man's ego isn't the same as loving him. Love builds connection. Ego seeks control. And as long as you were giving without boundaries, he didn't need to question anything. He didn't need to grow emotionally or appreciate you fully, because your loyalty was handed to him freely, without him having to truly earn it. But now you've stopped feeding the very thing that made him feel powerful. And what happens when someone loses a source of ego-boosting attention? They start to feel insecure. They start to wonder, is she moving on? Has she stopped caring? Is someone else getting the attention that used to be mine? That internal doubt chips away at his pride. And slowly he starts to realize that your affection was never about desperation. It was about love. And now that it's gone, he's forced to sit with a very uncomfortable truth. He took it for granted. He confused your consistency with neediness. He mistook your compassion for weakness, and now his ego isn't being fed. His pride has no one to lean on. He's alone, with no emotional mirror to reflect his worth back to him. And here's the deeper part. By stepping away, by going quiet, by no longer offering that endless supply of reassurance, you reclaim something far more valuable than his attention. You reclaim your emotional energy. Because the moment you stop feeding his ego, he's left to deal with his own reflection. And that's something he can't manipulate, distract, or silence. It forces him to confront how much of your love was freely given, and how little he ever truly reciprocated. There's a powerful truth that often goes unspoken in relationships. Men place higher value on what they have to work for. It's not about playing hard to get. It's not about manipulating or withholding. It's about understanding how male psychology is wired, how the act of pursuit activates emotional investment. You see, when something is earned, it holds meaning. When a man has to show up, be consistent, overcome obstacles, and win your time and trust, it awakens a part of him that wants to protect and preserve what he's worked for. But when affection, attention, and loyalty are handed to him too soon, too easily, or too unconditionally, without him showing depth, effort, or intention, it doesn't land the same. He doesn't have to fight for it. He doesn't have to grow for it. He doesn't have to wonder if he could lose it. And in that comfort, his appreciation dims. Not because you're not worthy, but because you became too accessible before he learned how to truly value you. That's where distance becomes powerful, because when you step back, when you remove your presence, your check-ins, your emotional support, you create a void. A space where he must decide, will he rise and reach for you? Or will he fall silent, revealing what you truly meant to him? Men are natural pursuers. They are built to move toward what matters. What feels earned becomes sacred. What costs nothing is too often treated like it holds no cost to lose. When he has to wonder how you feel, when he has to earn back your attention, when he starts to realize that your energy isn't freely available to him anymore, that's when the chase begins again. Not a game, but a recalibration, and through that pursuit, his emotional engagement deepens, because now there's risk, now there's effort, now he has to show up intentionally, because your distance has reminded him that you are not guaranteed. And that realization shifts everything. He starts remembering the way you used to listen when no one else did. He starts replaying the times you showed up when he didn't deserve it. And suddenly, he wants that version of you again. But this time, he knows he has to earn it, because men don't value what's simply there. They value what they had to fight through their own emotional walls to reach. And when you stop giving yourself away too easily, you challenge him to meet you where you are not, where it's convenient for him. The beauty of pulling back is that it restores balance. It returns the emotional effort to where it always belonged. In his hands, because if he truly wants you, distance won't deter him, it will drive him. Sometimes the most powerful mirror a person can face is your absence. When you're constantly around, emotionally, mentally, physically, it's easy for someone to avoid accountability. He doesn't have to think too deeply about what he's done or how he's made you feel. If he hurts you, you forgive him. If he pulls away, you reach out. If he gives you less, you still show up with more. And because you're still present, he convinces himself that everything is okay. But here's the hard truth. Your presence can make him comfortable, even when he's in the wrong. And comfort can blur the weight of his actions. That's why absence matters. Because when you finally go quiet, when you stop arguing, when you stop explaining how he hurt you, when you don't come running back after his silence. It forces him to sit alone with the very behavior he used to get away with, and slowly the fog begins to clear. He starts to remember things he brushed off, the way he dismissed your emotions, the times he took your patience for granted, the careless comments, the missed opportunities to love you better. It hits differently now. Not because you said anything, but because now you're gone. He looks for your name on his screen, and it's not there. He checks your profile, hoping to find signs that you're still waiting for him. But it's quiet. That silence becomes a stage, and all he can hear is the echo of the things he didn't do, the apologies he never made, the effort he withheld, the trust he chipped away at piece by piece. Absence doesn't just create longing, it reveals consequences. And here's the powerful part. When you were close, he could justify things. He could minimize the damage, rewrite the story in his mind, or even blame you for overreacting. But with distance, the story changes. Because now, there's no distraction. Now there's no emotional comfort from the very person he wounded. Now he's left to review the truth, without your forgiveness cushioning the impact, and that truth. It's uncomfortable. It forces him to see that what he thought was harmless was hurtful, what he dismissed as minor left scars and what he took for granted was rare. Absence has a way of isolating his mistakes under a spotlight. And once he sees them, he can't unsee them, because you're no longer there to carry the emotional load or soften the blow. He has to sit in it now. He has to feel what it's like to miss someone he once believed would never leave. And that's when realization begins, not in the moment he hurt you, but in the moment you stopped showing up despite it. There's a distinct moment in every woman's journey when something inside her shifts, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of quiet understanding. That moment is called detachment. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with shouting or ultimatums. In fact, from the outside, it may look like nothing at all, but inside, it's everything. Detachment is the silent breaking point. It's the moment when you stop trying to change his mind, stop waiting for him to show up differently, stop needing his validation to feel secure. It's when your emotional investment starts to return to its rightful place, back to you. And here's the truth. Detachment isn't the same as not caring. You still feel, but you no longer act on every emotion. You still notice, but you no longer react. You still love, but now you love yourself more. When you detach, you stop needing closure because you realize his silence already told you everything. You stop needing attention because your peace has become more valuable than his patterns. You stop trying to explain your worth to someone who was never ready to recognize it. Detachment is powerful because it creates an emotional boundary he can't cross anymore. The version of you who used to overthink every text, who waited on read receipts, who guessed her every word just to keep him close. That version is no longer available. She outgrew the chaos. She got tired of begging to be seen. And now your silence isn't passive, it's protective. You no longer chase, because you no longer see him as the prize. You no longer try to fix, because you've realized you were never the one breaking things. And slowly, your heart begins to heal, not because he came back and made it right, but because you finally stopped handing it over to someone who only showed up when it was convenient. Detachment is powerful because it sends a very different message than anger ever could. It says, I cared deeply, I showed up fully, and now I'm done explaining why I deserve the same in return. It doesn't require words, it doesn't require proof. It's a shift in energy that says, I release you, and not with bitterness, but with wisdom. And here's what he'll notice, that the more detached you become, the more magnetic you appear. Because now you're no longer emotionally tangled in his inconsistency. You're no longer giving him the satisfaction of knowing he still affects you. Now you're grounded, you're centered, you're unreachable in the way he used to know you, and that unsettles him more than anything else. There is a difference between walking away to make someone miss you, and walking away because you finally remembered who you are. That difference is called self-respect. You see, distance isn't always about creating longing in the other person. It's about creating clarity in yourself. It's about stepping back from someone who didn't appreciate your presence so you can return to the person who always deserved your love you. For too long, you tolerated less than you gave. You made excuses for him, waited for his emotional maturity, and believed that love was about being patient with someone who wasn't showing up for you. But slowly, somewhere deep inside, the realization began to grow. If I have to shrink myself to be loved, then this isn't love, it's survival. And that's where distance becomes sacred. It's not silence, it's not punishment. It's the loudest expression of self-respect a woman can ever give. It says, I am no longer available for anything that drains me, confuses me, or makes me question my worth. When you create distance, it's not just about making a point, it's about honoring your peace. Because staying close to someone who only shows up halfway chips away at your spirit. It teaches you to accept crumbs instead of connection. It forces you to overfunction while he underdelivers. And with every compromise of your boundaries, you lose a little bit more of yourself. But when you choose distance, you stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else close. You stop performing emotional labor that was never yours to carry. You stop apologizing for asking for the bare minimum. And in that distance, you begin to rise, not louder, not harder, just clearer. Self-respect doesn't scream, it simply exits. It chooses silence over chaos. It chooses solitude over confusion. It chooses alignment over attachment. And yes, he may notice your distance. He may suddenly remember what you meant to him. He may miss the version of you who always showed up, always cared, always forgave. But that version of you, she outgrew waiting to be chosen. Because the deeper truth is this: distance is not rejection. It's redirection back to yourself. When you walk away from someone who couldn't rise to meet you, you're not proving a point to him. You're proving a promise to yourself. I will never again lower my standards just to feel loved. Your distance now becomes a boundary, a quiet revolution, a turning point where you stop chasing validation and start standing in your value. So if you've chosen distance, know this: you didn't walk away to play games, you didn't go quiet to manipulate, you didn't detach to be cold. You stepped back because you finally realized that someone who truly values you will never need to be reminded of your worth. They will feel your absence like a void they can't fill because your presence was never ordinary. It was rare, it was real, and now in your distance he has two choices. He can rise, reflect, and reach for you with the effort he never gave before, or he can stay in silence and feel the weight of what he lost. But either way, you're not chasing, you're not waiting, you're not lowering yourself to be loved halfway. Because the version of you that once begged to be chosen has evolved into the woman who chooses herself. First, fully and unapologetically. And that kind of energy, that kind of peace, it doesn't just make him want you more. It teaches him that losing you was the moment he lost something he may never find again.